I'm Brian Campbell, one of the 6 members of the executive committee. We have 2 members from AIA, 2 members from APA, and 2 members from ASLA of the executive committee, and we're trying to organize these events on a monthly basis. As most of you know, this is an unusual one, so I'm glad to see that we have as many people as we do to help the city develop some good design guidance for the South Reach plan. Just a little history, as Laura knows, when I was at the city back in a long time ago, a while back, we developed the North Reach plan, and that was initially adopted in 2010, and now they've finally gotten around to getting down to the South Reach. It's been a long slog, I know, but so I've got a little history with this myself, and I'm very interested in seeing how the South Reach plan is going to unfold, and I'm specifically interested in seeing what some of the design guidance is for Macadam and some of the other areas that'll be under discussion. So, Cassie, I'm just going to turn it over to you. Cassie's a member of the urban design group of the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability at City. So go ahead, Cassie.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, Brian introduced me. I'm Cassie Ballou, and I'm with the Urban Design Studio. And I have my colleague here, Laura, who I know you guys are familiar with from her work on DOZA and the Green Loop and many other wonderful projects. I'm going to just jump right in and share my screen. Let's see here. Oh, Adrian, it says that my ability to screen share has been disabled.
I have never encountered that.
Let me try again.
Hold on one moment. Maybe if I make you a co-host, it might allow you to, so try now.
Okay. There we go.
Oh, good. There we go.
Yeah. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah, perfect.
All right, so we're here today for a presentation on Macadam design recommendations. And first, I just wanted to take a minute and thank you all for taking the time to review this work. And I know we're all busy and these are pretty challenging times, and I appreciate creating some space to listen to our presentation today. So this will be a short presentation on how we developed the character statement for Macadam, and I'll be providing some background on our process, discussing both the intent and content of the statement as well. So first, I wanted to just frame why we're here. We requested this meeting as an opportunity to review and gather your feedback as design professionals. To date, our feedback has mostly been with the Macadam community, and this presents an opportunity to hear from the design profession, who will most often be utilizing this character statement in the future to meet design guidelines. And so this proposal is part of a larger project plan that Brian mentioned. It's the River Plan South Reach proposed plan, and I'll review that a little, some of the details there a little later on. The questions I have placed here on the screen are to help frame your thinking as we move through the presentation. And I'll just read through them quickly, but it's really just to kind of hopefully clarify what we're hoping to get from you guys. Of course, I know you'll have more questions than what's on the screen, but so first, is this tool helpful in understanding the context you're responding to? Is it helpful to understand the desires of the community when determining how to respond to that context? And finally, is it clear what the guidance is for development within the district or the Macadam area, particularly along Macadam Boulevard, the riverfront, and between those two corridors? So moving on to This next slide, I wanted to spend 1 minute here just speaking to the process to give you guys an idea where we're at and where we've been. We initially began outreach to get feedback from the neighborhood or the community on the proposal in the discussion draft phase, which happened in November, December of 2019 and early January. And then that work was incorporated into a draft that went to the PSC on February 25th. And we received a lot of testimony, which led us to revise it again. And we brought that back on May 12th to a work session where they voted unanimously to support and support the recommendations as amended and request that the Design Commission consider their recommendation on July 16th, where we're headed next. And in June, we did another stint of outreach through an online survey and an online meeting to gather more feedback from the community. So yeah, our next step is to take the PSC's recommendation along with the survey results and your feedback today to the Design Commission to help inform their deliberation on the 16th. And I'm going to do a little plug here and encourage any of you to submit testimony if you're interested to the Design Commission. And these comments, again, will be part of their deliberation and discussion on this character statement and others coming down the road, because this is the first one of many, hopefully, and I'll speak to that more too. So now, the actual project. So as I mentioned, this work is part of a larger proposed plan, River Plan South Reach, and it's an update to the Willamette Greenway Plan from 1987. And many of you might know that that plan was adopted originally to manage the river and then development along and adjacent to its shoreline, as well as implement the mandates of Goal 17, statewide Goal 15, the Willamette River Greenway. Since then, the city's approach to planning along the Willamette Riverfront has evolved, and after the development of a new vision and strategy for the river, a new concept plans established a process by which the city could complete updates to this original Willamette Greenway plan for the three reaches, North Reach, Central Reach, and South Reach. And this portion, the South Reach, is the most undisturbed of the three reaches, with a multitude of parks and open spaces, as well as a diversity of residential uses along the riverfront. That this 20-year plan includes policies, zoning code, map amendments, and an action plan, among many other parts and pieces. And this area's features make up a diverse network of riverfront communities, which is one of the four overarching topics of the proposed plan. And one of the most active riverfront communities is the Macadam Plan District. And this presented an opportunity to reevaluate the design guidelines and standards that have regulated the area's development. So on the screen, a map of the study area, which stretches from the Ross Island Bridge here in the north to just south of the Selwood Bridge on the east side. And then it includes the unincorporated area of Dunthorpe on the, for which the city has some planning authority on the west side. The area outlined and hashed in red is the Macadam Plan District, and its currently new development in this area must meet special design guidelines or standards that were established in the 1980s. And in addition to the plan district and other applicable zoning code requirements, the design guidelines which regulate the area were developed in 1985 and known as the Macadam Corridor Design Guidelines. So one detail to note on this map in the hatched area is that if you look closely at the lot shapes and sizes, you'll see the majority are pretty large, a lot over 20,000 square feet, and pretty long from north to south. And this detail is important to understanding the river's accessibility within the district, which was a pretty common comment through our community outreach. The accessibility throughout the district to the riverfront was one of the main concerns. And you'll hear a little bit more about that later on. So as you all are pretty familiar with, Southwest Portland is seeing a lot of growth and change in building types and uses, and this is particularly true along within the Macadam area, along South Macadam avenues urban design, or the urban design character is changing as new mixed-use buildings are popping up along the 4-lane boulevard. Additionally, the Design Overlay Zone Amendments project is set to update the Citywide Design Guidelines and design standards to be consistent with and implement the 2035 Comprehensive Plan, which includes addressing the river plan, or river pattern area in this district. So all of these have kind of played a part in our recommendations within the plan. And the image on the screen helps to highlight the area's transition from an industrial hub in decline in the 1950s to a busy mixed-use community today. And the current design guidelines did play a large role in defining this transition to create a vibrant community. And staff believes the new guidelines, or we believe the new guidelines will provide an updated framework supporting these initial goals, but helping to guide Macadam through the next phase as we continue to experience growth and the area needs to respond to climate change, particularly along riverfront communities. So all these factors played a role in staff's recommendations to repeal the Macadam Corridor Design Guidelines and replace them with this proposed Citywide Design Guidelines, along with a new character statement. The previous testimony we received on the proposal was supportive of adopting the new guidelines, but there were a lot of concerns about losing context found within the older guidelines from 1985. So in response to these concerns, we recommended including a character statement within the Citywide Design Guidelines, and the statement would be designed to guide future development in the Macadam area, including along the riverfront. And many of you probably have seen this diagram before, but I just wanted to kind of situate or help us diagram where the character statements would live in the guidelines. As you may remember, the Citywide Design Guidelines are structured under 3 design tenets: context, public realm, equality, and resilience. And the character statements are intended to be nestled under the context tenet and support Guideline 1, build on the character, local identity, and aspiration of the place. And they provide a more specific and customized context within the guidelines by addressing community, architectural character, historical context, as well as natural resources particular to a specific area. And then each of the statements would reside ultimately within an appendix in the guidelines. And then these guidelines will apply, of course, in all the centers and corridors outside Central City. And the idea is that each one would have its own character statement. So, but these character statements, like this one, will have to be adopted separately through individual project plans. And the Macadam is the first one to get this opportunity. Since Macadam area is designated as a neighborhood center and civic corridor, as highlighted in yellow on the screen, it's an ideal place to utilize this first character statement. And this will be the first one created within Portland, and we're hoping it'll be a good template for others coming down the line. So now the character statement. I just wanted to give you guys an idea of how we arrived at the current draft. And so before getting into the detail, I thought it would be good to provide an overview of the major themes the revised draft focuses on. And these came out of numerous revisions and were shaped by testimony from the community. So the first is development along the Macadam corridor. And we specifically focused on encouraging development to create an environment that prioritizes pedestrians and reinforces Macadam's boulevard character. Next, development along the Willamette Riverfront. We included guidance on how development should respond along the riverfront and trails. And then finally, looking at how to connect those two corridors. We included language to stress the importance of improving physical and visual access, particularly east-west connections on the north-south sites between Macadam Boulevard and the riverfront. So the document is 2 pages, and the first page is dedicated to describing the area's history and existing conditions. Macadam, as many of you may be familiar with, has a very rich and varied history, which has been shaped by its ever-changing relationship to the Willamette Riverfront. And it was evident in our initial outreach and research that the riverfront is still one of the most valued assets and resources in the community. And despite this, it is still difficult to access, particularly from the area's busiest thoroughfare, Macadam Avenue. In addition, Macadam has become more of a hindrance to the pedestrian experience due to some inactive streetscapes, street-facing parking lots, and some very deep inactive landscape setbacks. And so this lack of access comes as a result of the area's varied history, which has determined the shape and size of lots, buildings, the placement of infrastructure like the railroad, which make it difficult to easily reach the riverfront from Macadam Avenue. So this is the story we wanted to tell with the background section to help set up and frame the character sections on the following page in a way that could discuss how to improve access to these resources within the district, and wanted to prompt future architects, builders, developers to think about ways to harness the most valued assets by understanding the history that created these conditions. And then as an addition to the section at the bottom, there's a current policy framework to provide some perspectives to help frame the discussion by just giving some context on where the city sees this district going and what has been planned for the future. And then finally, the sidebar on the right is to help frame the goals of the document and provide some additional city-sanctioned resources to be used by whoever's using the document. Also on the first page is a diagram to help illustrate concepts within the document. We created a diagrammatic map of the Macadam area, along with just simply orienting the user within the area, topography and street system. It also highlights important resources and landmarks in the area. And then since the river's ecosystems are vital to its natural beauty, we also included habitat areas along the riverfront as a reminder to users that these should be considered when developing in the area. And we hope to keep reworking this map as we hear more community feedback, and then of course comments from the Design Commission later this month or next month. So getting to the character sections themselves, this first one we kept, as we're working on it, one question that kept coming up was, what is community character? What are we trying to define here? And ultimately, we determined that it's going to be different for every character statement because community is defined very differently in every town and neighborhood center within Portland. In Macadam, the comments we received showed that the community here views itself as a regional destination for access to the Willamette Riverfront. The area's proximity to the river, natural resources, and varied topography present an opportunity and a challenge to foster a community which provides universal access to its natural resources and a vibrant urban environment along its major corridor. And to do this, future development must consider the role the natural environment plays in the community by making it more accessible to everyone in the district, not just those who live adjacent to it. On this next section, when we were developing it, it became clear that guidance on architectural character and urban design character within the Macadam area would need to be responsive to its varied context. This would not just be a one-size-fits-all approach. Buildings and sites along Macadam Boulevard would most likely look different than those along the Willamette Riverfront, and also buildings and development along Macadam Boulevard itself would look different as you go north to south. Our goal was to address these nuances clearly and concisely to help guide architects, planners, developers, and city staff on how to create development that was responsive to the needs of the district and those creating it. And these needs include preservation of character defining buildings, the creation of active and pedestrian-friendly public realm, and improved pedestrian connections along streets and between sites, and river responsive design that considered access to light and air along riverfront trails. Finally, the character section on natural and scenic resources is the largest section of the area's character statement. The focus here was to make it clear to developers that, or whoever is using this statement, that preserving the natural environment of the district was vital to maintaining its character and, frankly, its future. New buildings, especially along the riverfront, need to demonstrate the measures they are taking to lower their impact on the surrounding environment, whether this is through the incorporation of green building practices, landscaped areas with native plantings, or orienting buildings to access across sites to enhance views. We believe an effort needs to be made to maintain the natural beauty of the scenic area. And that's what we tried to get across in this character section. And with that, I'm going to move on to the question or discussion session. I'm going to put the questions I asked in the beginning back up on the screen just to help kind of guide or give us some context. But I open this up for discussion.
Okay. So Laura, did you say you wanted to, before we get into that, did you want to add anything about the relationship to DOZA?
Sure, I can add a little bit, and just we can take questions about the relationship between the design overlay zone amendments and then this piece on South Reach specific to the Macadam area. But just to back up a little bit, for several years now, most of you may recall that we have been working with the community and with our various, with the two commissions, Design Commission and Planning and Sustainability Commissions, on some recommendations for the design overlay zone. And part of that work is an update of the what's currently the community design guidelines. And so we have rewritten those, and I know many of you are already familiar with that, but they are the Citywide Design Guidelines. A couple of weeks ago, Design Commission, after about 9 work sessions and over 200 amendments, they have recommended that draft to be forwarded to City Council. And part of that work is this Guideline 1 that Cassie talked about, which is building on the context, building on the character and local identity and the aspiration of a place. And there's a specific call out to future character statements. So we're really excited that Macadam, through the work that Cassie's doing, is moving forward with this idea that every area, as we do planning work, would have this opportunity to specifically define what the local context and the aspiration of the place is. As you can imagine, working on Citywide Design Guidelines, you know, we were really intentional about trying to be generically specific, and we were really encouraging the guidelines to do some homework when you're trying to define the local context, but we also recognize that it's pretty handy to have that in front of you. And so that's what these character statements would give a lot more specificity to each area. So we're excited that Macadam is sort of doing this test run and seeing how that can work. So Cassie's been working with the community there to help hone in what exactly are the objectives from an architectural and urban design point of view, from natural resources, and from a community perspective. And we hope to roll this out in other areas as well. So any feedback on that as a mechanism to define local context through the character statement, and specifically Macadam, is what we're looking for, because this is our first one.
Yeah, this is Sean. I have a comment. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
At first blush, I think this is a really great pass, and I think the way you use the framework, it doesn't just become a list of statements, but everything relating back to that framework of kind of the 3 themes is really helpful. And I think it'll be interesting to see from this to the next districts, you know, some would expect some of these themes to not be as important. And I think, you know, emphasizing the river connections here makes a lot of sense. As you get further away, you'd expect that to be less of a context driver, for example. I think that's really strong. I also think in this particular district, it's really helpful to say what is not context. And I think that statement about, hey, what we were aiming for and what we allowed in the 70s and 80s, that's not it. This suburban campus. So I think, you know, saying what context is, but also, I mean, we kind of tiptoe around that for a lot of good reasons, but you know, that's one of the stronger statements about what context isn't. And I really laud that. I think it's really good. So, I mean, I think my response to these 3 questions is, yeah, this is a helpful tool. It is helpful to understand the desires of the community. The last bullet's the only one where I have a question, and this is, it may be a little focused in a detail that is not, you know, central to the planning process, but the question I keep asking myself from a developer standpoint in this specific area is, so many of the parcels between the river and the Macadam have a frontage on the Willamette shoreline. And I don't mean the Willamette River shoreline, but on the trolley shoreline, or excuse me, the trolley property, which you've characterized as a historic railroad. And I'm just wondering, like, what is the city's or the plan's attitude about the future of that city-owned, excuse me, partially city-owned property? I wasn't quite clear, like, if I have a parcel as a developer and I've got a frontage on Macadam and I've also got a frontage on the Willamette Shoreline trolley property, like, how do I reconcile that? Or what's the statement the city's making about those relationships?
That's a great question. And you're making me wonder if maybe we needed to add a little more, maybe not detail, but speak to that a bit more. The plans for that, I wish my colleague who's working on the South Beach project was here to get more into that nuance. I don't know that I can speak to that, but I can say that that's something we can work on adding into the statement, is clarifying
well, then
that.
I think I just leave it at that. I think the city's streetcar system plan kind of has an attitude about that space. I think there's a little bit of it's not fully resolved how an individual site would respond to that aspiration. So that might be an area where a little more clarity and a little more, you know, real specific attitude could be very helpful. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, thanks.
We have a question from the chat, Cassie, and I'll just read it. Native American tribal history in the area was vague in the statements. What efforts are being made to involve the Oregon Native American Chamber in driving design here? And then the same goes for Portland NAACP, and this is from Emily Mattis. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right.
Emily, thank you for that comment. And through the outreach and a lot of the outreach from the larger projects, I know there's been a big effort on the part of the Southreach team to reach out to the Native American community within the Southreach boundary area and in general. And we try to incorporate some of those comments that could relate or give some guidance in terms of design to the statement, or give some guidance to development. And that's where some of the language around what to do with the riverfront, allowing for more access for canoes and things like that have come in, but it is something that we struggled with. We did not get a lot of feedback from that community on some larger issues, and it's something that we're working on. That's why we did another set of outreach in June to hopefully get more feedback, which again, we were kind of lacking from that community. As far as the NAACP, we did not, as far as I know, that was not a participant in the Southreach comments or outreach, but I can't speak to that fully since I wasn't part of that initial outreach for the plan. But we mainly stuck to reaching out to to the community, sending out a newsletter to those who had shown interest. Sorry, I'm thinking through the process while talking and struggling a bit here, but we did make a valid effort to try and include as many people as we could, but given the demographics of the area, it was a struggle, and I don't think I've answered your question as well as I had hoped. But, you know.
Can I, this is Emily, can I just
Yeah.
respond to what you
Yeah.
said? Thank you for the presentation, by the way, and for opening this up to comment. I'm an architectural designer at Soderstrom Architects, so I'm just very interested in what's going on in this development. On top of you know, making a larger effort to really name the tribes that have had history there, and to not just whitewash their history by saying that they used to be a part of the area, maybe we would have more luck reaching out to the Oregon Historical Society and get some maps and try to do some deeper dive research on the history of that area, because the demographics of that area are changed because of the history of Portland and redlining and a lot of other very violent history that's happened. So just reaching out to who's there now isn't necessarily going to help restore some of those mistakes that have been made in the city.
Right. No, that's a good point. Reaching out to the Historic Society. I'm going to add that to our list of recommendations to the commission to consider. It's something, and kind of being new to this process myself, thinking about how to get as many people involved and include as many voices as we can. It's something that I'm hoping we can improve as we do more character statements. So this one, I appreciate your feedback, and I'm gonna make a point to bring that up with the commission. Hopefully.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Emily.
Is there any more questions in the chat? I can't see them since I have my screen shared.
No, there don't seem to be any more questions on the chat. Anybody else have a question about the process, or actually, I think one of the things that I would note is that since the Design Commission meeting is July 16th, we're kind of a little bit time constrained in trying to figure out any uniform response from the urban design panel. So what I guess I would encourage anybody who's interested in this to actually go ahead and just submit comments on their own too. And how would you most efficiently suggest that we do that, Cassie or Laura? I mean, for people just to kind of go right to the Design Commission.
To testify? You can send written testimony to me, and
okay.
I don't know if I've given you I think Brian, you have my contact information.
Yeah, I do.
And the notice that went out, and actually I have a next steps here. I'll just move on. So the public notice has gone out this week, and you can submit written testimony to me and then also testify in person at the hearing on July 16th.
And I put your contact information in the.
Oh, thank you, Laura.
Sure.
Okay, great. So does anybody else have a comment or a question? While we've got both Cassie and Laura here, we can kind of anything about the process, or I think the character statements, I at least haven't read them at this point, and I need to go down and look at them more carefully. And I encourage everybody who's interested in this to actually go in and do that and make suggestions. This is a new thing, as they've pointed out. I'm really interested in this as a general rule of being much more location specific in these, in design guidelines. As Laura knows, we've had our discussions about other places in Portland about specificity in design guidelines, and so this is an interesting process to me. So I will try and take a closer look at this one. And I guess I would just say I'm really interested in what you might find about the North American tribal history along here. Obviously, they were present along the river. So, I mean, and if there's a way to get in touch through the Native American Chamber, I mean, if you haven't already done that, maybe you have, that would be fascinating actually to find out what they have to say.
So I know that the South Reach team for the larger project plan had a lot of outreach with the Native American, the tribal communities along the riverfront, and that was occurring before I came onto the project, unfortunately. But my counterpart in this project on the South Reach side wrote a lot of that within the South Reach report. So there's a lot of history there. They did a lot of work. A lot of that we tried to get into the background of the statement, but as I alluded to earlier, we didn't get a lot of commentary from that part of the area, from that community. So I would love to get more response from them. Yeah.
So there's another comment in here from Gary Pagenstucker about does the Dunthorpe community present any special challenges? Now it's a little out of my understanding. It's a little out of the study area, right? So, but it is a kind of unique spot in the.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's because we're just focused on the district, Macadam district. That's where the design overlay is. So that's really only where this character statement would apply.
Right. Okay, anybody else? We have another 15 minutes if we wanted to take it, but if we don't have any other questions or comments at this point, we can also close it up. Not hearing anybody having to ask a burning question or oh, now Emily's back though. She's, are there any flood resistance guidelines for the shore?
Don't
know. Quite.
Guidelines? Well, we don't have any flood resistance guidelines within DOZA or within the character statement. I know that the South Reach plan has a whole topic section, and they're changing the zoning code regarding the setbacks and watershed health, and a lot of that is in the main project plan. But for this particular portion, no, we don't have anything that speaks specifically to flood regulations, except that development, trying to guide development to be more responsive and stepping back from the greenway and the shore to help that mitigation.
Yeah, I would just remind people that this is a very small, well, I don't know how small, this is a very distinct part of the overall South Reach plan. And if you're interested in all the other issues, I'm sure you can get yourself well educated by going in and looking at that too. So,
and to speak to that larger plan, if you're interested, it is going before the City Council on August 27th.
Okay, good. That's good to know too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we have I don't recognize what. Is there any focus on how the public right-of-way would be a driver for development or access to the river? I guess.
Say that again?
Well, it's on the chat here. I don't know if you have access to that. It says, is there any focus on how the public right-of-way would be a driver for development or access to the river? So.
Yes. Oh, go ahead, Brian.
No, I'm go ahead.
So the public right-of-way, it's tricky to get into that with this statement because the design review doesn't necessarily have jurisdiction over the public right-of-way, but we did try to speak to how property should respond along the public right-of-way in terms of creating a more pedestrian-friendly and active public realm, and then hoping to let the guidelines themselves speak to the specificity or the giving directives on how those best practices could happen. We also talked in the statement about the connections between sites, which speaks to how private development should respond to the public realm. So we kind of allude to it, but we can't speak specifically to the those areas since it's a little bit outside the realm of design review.
Okay. Any other questions or comments here? Well, if not, I think we'll go ahead and close it down. Cassie and Laura, thanks very much for presenting this. It's a very interesting part of the city, and I hope that people feel kind of interested enough to look at the statement more carefully and provide some feedback on that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And just to follow up, this character statement is a very, it's a very small piece of the larger plan. So some of the questions and issues that were brought, as Cassie noted, may be a part of the larger plan, which is actually a larger area even than what's in the design overlay and what's covered by the character statement. So if you are interested in, it is unfortunate that our Cassie's colleague in the Southreach larger plan wasn't able to join us today, because I think she would have probably been able to answer some of the questions, especially about outreach and engagement. But we can also follow up with some of those questions if there's some interest.
Okay. All right. Again, thanks everybody for joining. I guess we'll adjourn. And Adrian, thanks for helping us out here once again. Technical difficulties. We were minimal today, so that was great. Thanks, you guys. We'll see you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.